What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
Boo! And welcome back to more Films That Are Constant Critique, where we take a look at films, some good, some bad, and some downright awful. I'm Bongo Baikov, joined by our host Maverick, Dren, Zaria. This week we're taking a look at the films Halloween and Halloween 2. Specifically the 1978 and 1981 movies.
Yeah, none of that Rob Zombie bullshit. Okay, so... And yeah, hopefully this is a better Halloween-themed episode than the last one we did. So Halloween was released on October 25th, 1978. And it cost about $300,000 and made $70 million.
That's pretty good.
One of the most successful independent films of all time. For a while. We have a returning director and composer. Because John Carpenter directed this and did the music.
Yep. We have quite a few returning sort of people on this one, actually.
Yep, we do. Some John Carpenter regulars, actually, because Jamie Lee Curtis is in this.
So was Donald Pleasance.
And we've also just had Jamie Lee Curtis on the podcast like a bunch of times.
Yeah.
True Lies, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Did a voice cameo in Escape from New York.
Mm.
This is the announcer at the beginning of the movie. Donald Pleasance, the number of movies that guy was in is ridiculous. I mean...
He's just one of those guys that's just in absolutely everything he could be in.
Like Christopher Lee or some of those guys like that. Honestly, I envy this man. I mean, he got to play one of the best Bond villains. He was in The Great Escape, and he was also in two of the best John Carpenter movies, among other things.
Yeah.
I mean, Nick Castle, which he also appears as Michael Myers in the David Gordon Green Halloween movies.
Yep.
And he actually ended up becoming a director.
And he also co-wrote Escape from New York.
And he has some interesting directing credits, because he did The Last Starfighter.
Oh.
Have you ever... Do you know anything
Yeah,
about that?
I saw it. It was a long time ago, but I saw like most of it.
Yeah, I enjoy that movie, actually. Dennis the Menace. Michael Myers directed Dennis the Menace. And Major Payne.
What? Michael Myers directed Major Payne? That wasn't a connection I was prepared for.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so initial thoughts. What can I say? It's great. I mean, you know, I think it's one of the best horror movies ever made. Certainly top 10 material. I would say I generally prefer horror movies that are atmospheric over ones that are overly reliant on, like, gore. And this one definitely has a great atmosphere, which is impressive because this was made on a really low budget.
Yeah.
And it's shot super well, so that's inspiring right there. Great score. The acting from Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasance is very good. It goes by at a really quick pace.
Yeah.
It's also kind of a Halloween tradition for me to watch this in October, like each year. You know, it just fits the season really well. I mean, it's not Halloween if I haven't watched this or the two Addams Family movies yet. So okay, but I'll get into more detail as we go. But yeah.
So for me, a little bit of a story time.
Oh,
during my freshman year around Halloween time, me and my friends binged all 12 of the Friday the 13th movies. And then we decided that next year, our sophomore year, we were going to binge the Halloween movies. And so, obviously, we went in order of when the movies came out. So we watched this, and I believe, I'd have to check this again, but I believe that was the first John Carpenter movie I'd ever seen.
Had you seen The Thing yet?
No, I saw this before I saw The Thing.
Okay.
And it's pretty damn good. It's fantastic. Like you mentioned, it's incredibly atmospheric. It's pretty, the premise of it's pretty interesting, especially at the time. It was, quite a bit fresher than it is nowadays.
Exactly, yeah. This is
the soundtrack is...
That's another thing we should mention. This is one of the first movies that was considered a slasher film.
Yeah.
There'd been a few movies before that which you could maybe consider slasher films. Psycho, the original Black Christmas,
Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
but a lot of those didn't quite have the conventions that people associate with slasher films.
Yeah.
Nowadays, this one definitely introduced more of the tropes that people associate with those types of movies.
Yeah. And I think a big part of the atmosphere is the music that John Carpenter, wrote for this movie. It is just absolutely iconic. And then we watched the rest of the films, and we gave up after H2O.
Yeah. That's kind of what happens, yeah. That's kind of when I was rewatching some of these, and I stopped after H2O as well. Although I skipped 6. I skipped 6 on this rewatch because I don't...
I have 6 on Blu-ray.
Does it have the producer's cut, by the way? Oh, is that cover?
I think it does. Yeah, I know I've sent a picture of it before.
Is that the one with the VHS?
Yeah. Yep, real quick, it was the producer's cut. I just looked it up.
The only thing that keeps 6 from being completely unwatchable for me is Donald Pleasance, but aside from that, that movie's just terrible. The plot makes no sense. The characters suck. It's just so bad. And that's another thing that's a shame, is how good this movie was, and then it was followed by a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
One thing that's interesting is Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee were considered to play Loomis.
That would have been interesting.
Let's see, of those two...
I think Peter Cushing would have been...
He'd be a better fit than Christopher Lee for Loomis, I think.
Yeah.
Christopher Lee as Michael Myers. That's a waste of Christopher Lee.
Cushing does make sense because he played Van Helsing quite a few times.
Yeah, and Loomis has been compared to Van Helsing, kind of.
Yeah.
And Christopher Lee later called turning down this role one of the biggest regrets of his career. So... Then again, he was spared. He was spared from appearing in Halloween 6, though. So there's that.
This is off topic, but I didn't know that Cushing had played Doctor Who for 2 movies.
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't.
Granted, they're really bad, so... I thought I mentioned those on the podcast at one point. Anyway, whatever. It's fine. Leonard Maltin. What do you want to guess? He
had to have given it a high score. I'm going 3.5.
3 out of 4.
Uh,
Same rating he gave Batman Forever.
yeah.
He called it well made with lots of scares, plus in-joke references for film buffs. Okay. This movie also has a very memorable poster and tagline.
Yeah.
Like the pumpkin holding the knife and
The tagline.
The night he came home.
Yeah.
It's a good tagline. Yeah, so the plot is that Michael Myers murdered his sister as a kid and then was locked away for 15 years before he escaped the hospital. And now he's heading back to his hometown of Haddonfield, which is in Illinois.
It's in Illinois, but it looks like California because it was filmed in California.
He heads back to his hometown to kill more people. Meanwhile, his psychiatrist, Dr. Loomis, is trying to warn people about the danger, and they're not listening because, well, of course, you can't listen to Donald Pleasance. He played a Bond villain. And a babysitter is taking care of some kids on the night before Halloween, so yeah. Okay, that's the basic plot. So the pros, we mentioned earlier, the music. I mean...
Oh, music is just amazing. I don't really know if I've ever heard a John Carpenter score that I don't like.
Yeah, I don't know. Ghosts of Mars, does he do the music for Ghosts of Mars?
He did. I don't know if I've listened to the Ghost of Mars soundtrack.
Because I remember some of the music in that being pretty bad. Anyway.
Oh, Anthrax did some music for it.
Oh, maybe that's why. Maybe it wasn't John Carpenter, maybe it was just Anthrax. Would you rather take some Anthrax or listen to the Anthrax soundtrack for Ghosts of Mars? There's a question. But yeah, so John Carpenter, again, it's a great score. I don't think this movie would have worked as well if it wasn't for the score. It's very simple, but very creepy and very memorable. And it just works in every scene it's in. There weren't that many movies in the 70s with like an electronic score either, so that would have been kind of new.
Yeah, it is kind of unique because it's very synth heavy.
Yeah.
Not quite as synth heavy as some of his later stuff, but still pretty synth heavy.
And also the cinematography is great.
Oh yeah,
especially during like the night scenes too. Like,
yeah, especially this is like kind of jumping in a little bit, but especially the ending of the movie.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like the outside of the house and like.
Yeah, when they're going through all these like just empty shots of the house and the neighborhood while the theme plays. It's a pretty paranoid ending, and it's a combination of just, the music in that scene and the fact that it's all, dark and you're just kind of searching to see if Michael is in any of the shots.
Yeah. There's like so many. I could probably spend the whole podcast just talking about good shots.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, just even from the start, the opening credits. And also just the way the opening is shot, too, because it's all done in one take. And it's this really long scene of, like from Michael's point of view, where you see him, like...
Yeah, from young, 6-year-old Michael Myers' view of him killing his sister.
Yeah, it's a really creepy scene, and it works really well.
Yeah.
And also how you see, like... the camera view from like inside the mask too, and the knife. It's very creative, and a lot of movies have probably ripped it off at this point too. Or just the ending with like Michael Myers stalking Laurie Strode. Like the shots of him in that closet, like.
Yeah. There's a lot of Just sort of shots in the dark, especially during like the final sequence of the movie where you just see his like white face like slowly coming in from the darkness.
Oh yeah, like he could be anywhere in those shadows
Yeah.
too. That's like
Yeah.
super creepy. Just like, it does feel stylish, but it's not overdoing it either.
Yeah.
Which is nice. That's kind of John Carpenter. That's kind of just what his movies are like. They have like a very distinct style, but it never feels like intrusive or anything.
Yeah.
I also, to give this movie the right effect, I watched it in the basement with like the lights turned off.
That's how you're supposed to watch it.
Exactly, yeah, and it worked very well.
Yeah, I ended up watching this with my brothers. I made sure it was like dark first and that we were all around the TV. It was a pretty good viewing experience.
Yeah. Especially if I haven't seen it before, because then there's like a lot of surprise.
Yeah. That was their first time seeing it, so that was fun watching it with them.
Yeah, because you drunkenly took one of them to see Ends.
Yeah. No, I took one of my brothers because I was bored. And I had a couple drinks and I was like, well, I can't drive, but I want to go see Halloween Ends again. So I forced him to go with me. And he was very confused the whole time.
That's so weird. He probably wasn't that confused, though, because you were drunk at the time. So. And there's just also just the way they set up Michael Myers in this movie, too. Like, the fact that Loomis doesn't even want to consider him a human being.
Yeah. Because he very much feels more like a force of nature than he does a person.
They keep calling him the boogeyman.
Yeah. He feels like more mythological. And like you don't entirely know sort of what his motive is. You just know it's some creepy guy going around killing a bunch of people.
Yeah, like, and that's part of why I like this movie so much, is that's the fact you don't really know why he's doing this.
Yeah.
Because it makes him, like, super unpredictable. And that's a huge part of why I enjoy this movie so much, which is just Michael Myers as a character.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite, like, horror movie villains. Like, he's my favorite of the Slash Street Boys, in fact.
In terms of slashers, I think he's probably my second favorite.
Jason's your favorite, I know that.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I do really like Leatherface, too, but it really is just on the strength of one movie, so... like,
yeah, and I've only seen 2 Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, and the first one's great. I was sick out of my mind with COVID when I watched the second one, so I'm not sure what to think of it.
That's a fair assessment, because I've seen that movie while not sick from COVID, and I don't quite know what to think of it either.
All I remember is that Dennis Hopper was dual-wielding chainsaws, and then everything blew up.
Oh, that's the best scene in the movie, yeah. And I do really like Freddy Krueger, but I do think he kind of got a little too cartoonish in some of the later sequels.
He got cartoonish very fast.
But I like Freddy because he's one of the more creative, like, slasher villains, And then Jason, I mean, what can you say about Jason? Just like, he's one of the few that he actually got more badass as the movies went along. But what I like about Michael Myers, why he's my favorite of those guys, is, well, part of it's the look. I think the costume is great.
And something we should mention about the costume, the mask is a William Shatner mask.
Yes, I knew that was gonna get mentioned at some point. I keep waiting for, like, a Halloween movie to have, like, a William Shatner cameo.
I was really hoping that the new ones were gonna have Shatner, like, living in town or something.
And he gets killed by Michael Myers. Or if Or if Michael Myers runs into comedian Mike Myers. That would have been pretty funny.
Maybe when they make the sequel to Halloween Ends called Halloween Lives, when wood chippered Michael Myers comes back to life, that's what they'll do.
Maybe Mike Myers is Michael Myers. Like,
it's just throughout the movie Mike Myers slowly becoming Michael Myers.
Mike Myers like takes the mask off and says, "Groovy, baby." But sorry, I keep getting sidetracked. But yeah, it is a William Shatner mask that where it was based on like a mask from Star Trek, or like I've heard contradictory things for it. Actually, I've heard it was based on either a Captain Kirk mask or a mask from The Devil's Reign or something. But
I think I've usually heard it's just the Captain Kirk mask.
Kirk, yeah. It's funnier if it's Captain Kirk.
And there's some shots, like, when the light catches it right, you can really tell that it's a Shatner mask, and it's really funny.
But yeah, it is a great costume, though. Just like it's just this tall, imposing dude with this expressionless mask. It's like...
Yeah, and like just completely black eyes.
The blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. And again, I like that we don't know why he kills people, because, you know, Jason, we know why he kills people. It's because neglectful camp counselors, basically.
Yeah.
And because he's a prude.
Yeah, Jason is just like a moral crusader, killing anyone who engages in premarital sex or drug use.
Some people have tried to, like, say that. I'm like, you're reading too much into it, people. Because that happens in, like, every slasher movie.
Yeah.
And Leatherface, he's killing people just because his family's crazy, and he has kind of, like, he's got, like, you know, a mental disability.
Yeah.
Freddy Krueger kills people just because he's like a demon, basically.
Yeah, he's a dream demon, so what else is he gonna do?
But, like, Michael's a complete mystery, at least in these early movies.
Yeah, at the very least in this first movie, he's a mystery.
Like, he just up and snapped and just killed his sister, and they don't explain why, and you're just like, oh my god. Like, just... And also just the fact that, like, he's just pure evil. Like, everybody sets him up as just pure evil. Like, there's no way to reason or, like, bargain with him. He could also just come from anywhere to, like, get you. That's terrifying. You know? And we don't even see his face or his eyes, except for, like, a few brief seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't hear his voice either.
And it's a lot scarier when you can't see who it is. It keeps up a lot of that mystery and that feeling that it could be anybody behind that mask.
Maybe it is William Shatner or Mike Myers. And also just the way he appears and disappears is super creepy, too, because he's just always lurking around in shadows, just... I guess that, like...
He's got some...
I guess the, like, mechanic suit he's wearing just blends into the dark really well or something.
Yeah. He also has some pretty memorable kills in this movie.
Yeah, one that always sticks with me is when he, like, stabs the dude against the wall and, like...
And he just sticks there. Yeah. And then he stares at the body for a couple seconds and, like, tilts his head as he looks at it.
It's almost like he's a, like, carpenter that finished building a table and he's just kind of admiring his handiwork. It's so creepy.
Yeah.
And there's also that one shot of him carrying the dead girl. That shot It's pretty creepy too. Like with the kid sees him through the window. There's a lot of shots through windows in this too.
There are.
That's another thing I noticed. It kind of gives it this. One thing I like about this movie as well is like it feels like you're just in this little small town, just watching the neighbors at some points, and like one of the neighbors apparently is Michael Myers. Jesus.
I also like how right after he kills the one dude by pinning him to the wall, he goes up to kill his girlfriend, but he's wearing like a bed sheet and the guy's glasses so that she thinks it's her boyfriend.
In like a ghost costume, yeah.
Yeah.
And he strangles her with the phone while she's trying to talk to Lori on the phone. Yeah, that part's pretty good too. Like, there's not that many kills in this one. Like, the first half of the movie's mostly just... If you see Michael, he's just standing at a distance, staring at people. It's just like...
And even when there are kills, it's not very bloody either.
Not really, no. They get bloodier in the second one, but yeah, like...
Yeah.
It's pretty tame for, like, an R rating, but yeah... But, like, it doesn't really matter, though, because it's still fucking terrifying. Like, honestly, like, just... The fact it takes place so much in shadow, you can only imagine some of what goes on in those shadows.
Yeah.
And again, just, I like the small town vibe, too. It just, it's a good setting for a horror movie.
Because you get the feeling that a lot of people in this town sort of know each other, so having this sort of outside, almost evil force come in and just disrupt the place sort of makes it just a bit more scary.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing I like about the first Jaws movie, where it's just like you get this feeling of like this community. Obviously, very different setting. It's like next to the ocean, but like it's kind of similar thing. It's just this little community of people, and then some monsters like eating a bunch of people, you know.
Yeah.
Which Michael Myers kind of does that too, because he eats a dog at one point. Like, Jesus.
Yeah, like that's one of the first kills he has once getting to Haddonfield, is he kills and eats a dog. He also takes the head, like the headstone of his mother's grave, back to his house.
That part was so creepy. Yeah, he has like the dead body set up with the like gravestone on a bed. Yeah, that was Jesus. I love when high schoolers are played by actors who clearly aren't in high school. You know? That's always funny. Which, speaking of which, Laurie Strode, we should talk about her a bit. This was one of... I don't know if it was her first movie, but it was one of her first movies.
It was very early on.
Jamie Lee Curtis was in. And she's a good character. Like, what sets her apart from, like, other slasher leads is, like, she's definitely smarter and more resourceful than... a lot of them, you know, because a lot of slasher movies is just dumb, like screamy types usually.
Yeah, or they're like a stoner and they just laugh and walk closer to the serial killer.
But like in this one, I find it interesting. She's able to come up with like ways to ward off Michael Myers. Like when she's in that closet, she pulls out the like a wire hanger and like pokes him in the eye with it.
Yeah.
It's also just kind of funny that this is Jamie Lee Curtis, you know? Because now I associate her more with comedies than horror movies.
Yeah.
Fish Called Wanda, that's one of my favorite movies, actually.
And then I'm sure a lot of people who grew up in the early 2000s probably equate her with Freaky Friday.
Freaky Friday, yeah. Yeah. She is pretty funny in that movie, to be fair. And you just feel bad for her that she's like has to deal with this just complete like psycho, just breaking into her
Yeah.
house, like killing her friends, you know. There's so many slasher films where I'm just like, oh my god, just die already. But with her, I'm like, I don't want her to die because I actually feel bad that she's going through this.
Yeah, she feels like a very believable, like, just a high schooler.
She doesn't look like a high schooler, though.
No, she's able to act like one, at least.
Like I said earlier, the high schoolers all look like they're in, like, their 20s. And also, I think this is one of the first, like, slasher movies that was, like, set during a holiday. I guess you did have Black Christmas before this, but, like, this one also did that.
So this one was sort of the trendsetter for that, then.
And having it set on Halloween, I mean, that makes sense. You know, horror, you know, spooky. And I think they do a good job of capturing the vibe of the holiday as well, you know, just with, like, all the jack-o'-lanterns and stuff.
Yeah.
One person even says, it's Halloween, I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare. I love how Michael just stands around during the daytime.
Yeah, that's all he does, is he just stands and stares at people. And breaks into hardware stores.
Where does he go? Like, does he, like, just...
And we have to bring up the fact that he's been, like, locked in an asylum for most of his life, but knows how to drive a car.
That's true, yeah. I guess he learned it from watching his sister. Oh, wait a minute.
The sequels try to explain this in, like, the dumbest possible way, but it's just kind of a funny detail when you just look at the movie on its own.
Which sequel did they explain it in? I can't remember.
I guess they don't fully explain it, but, like, the only way it would be possible, because in later sequels they established that there's some cult at the asylum that made him, like, the harbinger of evil. And so the only possible explanation is that they taught him how to drive. For some reason.
That's so stupid, yeah. Granted, that's the least stupid thing about the whole cult thing, but anyway, I guess in some of the later movies it's shown that he, like, lives down in sewers sometimes.
Yeah.
I guess that's where he goes. He's like,
I think in this one he just stays inside his old house during the day mostly, but
yeah, because they do find the dog there. Yeah. I also forgot that Don't Fear the Reaper plays in this.
Yeah. The sequels, like the Rob Zombie remake and then the new trilogy, love to remind you that they played Don't Fear the Reaper in this one.
H2O plays it as well, which
that doesn't surprise me.
I wouldn't blame you for not remembering that, because that's a very forgettable movie. Another huge advantage this movie has is, how have we not talked about him yet? Donald Pleasence.
He does a fantastic job in this movie.
I think he's what makes these movies for me. Like, he's a huge part of why I enjoyed the older Halloween movies so much. You know, I kind of lose interest in the sequels after he's gone, if I'm being honest, because he really sells the threat of Michael Myers. Like, he makes this dude sound like the fucking embodiment of pure evil. Like, just...
He spends a lot of this movie just, you know, telling people how scary Michael Myers is, but just the way that Donald Pleasence just talks and acts as the character, it's done phenomenally.
It's really admirable that this dude is terrified of Michael Myers, but he's gonna try his damnedest to stop this dude, you know?
Yeah.
And they do kind of take it to ridiculous extent in the sequels, because he just gets crazier and crazier.
He goes just, like, absolutely insane by the end of the 6th one.
In 5, he's especially crazy. 'Cause he's
In 4, he tries to shoot like a 6-year-old girl.
Jesus. Like 5, in 5, he like spends most of the movie like just yelling at this young girl, and like he like uses her as bait at one point. It's ridiculous. But it is kind of funny, like, because he's Michael's psychiatrist.
And he wants nothing more than Michael Myers dead.
Like, the psychiatrist is being driven mad by his own patient. That's kind of funny to me. He's kind of
I also like
Captain
the scene
Ahab to Michael Myers' Moby Dick.
I like the scene when there's like all the little kids out in front of the Myers house, and Loomis like scares them away.
Get your ass away from there!
Hey, Lonnie, get your ass away from there.
To like scare him off. That was funny. Yeah.
And he kind of like laughs to himself when they run off. I don't know if you noticed that, but he just kind of like laughs a little bit.
That's like one of the few times he smiles in the movie. That was funny. I love the monologue he gives, which everybody who's seen this movie probably knows what I'm talking about, where he's just like... I think he's talking to the sheriff, if I remember right, when they're in the Myers house, and he's like telling him about Michael Myers. He's like saying,
I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
Yeah, no, it's a very good monologue.
it's so creepy, yeah. Like, I also just like the fact that you don't really see scenes of, like, Loomis and Michael in the sanitarium when he's like examining him, because then you can only imagine like the image that he's talking about there. The TV version ruins it though, because there's like a scene where they show Michael in the insane asylum, but because you can only imagine like what his eyes look like, and you do kind of see that throughout the movie because he's wearing the mask. Like he might as well just be describing Michael Myers' mask, because that's what his mask looks like.
Yeah,
blank, pale, emotionless face with the blackest eyes.
I also love how, you know, like we were talking about, Loomis sees Michael as just the embodiment of pure evil. And that's also reinforced by the ending, because Loomis ends up shooting Michael 6 times, and he falls out a window into the lawn. And then Loomis looks away for 1 second, and Michael is gone. And he just looks out into the night as if he almost expected something like that would happen.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't look surprised about it at all. And there's a very good reason I'm mentioning that.
Yeah, because he comes back in the next movie.
Yeah, well, because they changed, like, the take or something in the second movie, because they play that at the beginning, but he has, like, this look of surprise on his face, which I think kind of ruins that scene, but...
It's better without that. Like, the fact that he was expecting it. He knows Michael. I mean, it's just like, this is the only dude that knows who Michael Myers is and what he's capable of, you know?
Yeah.
Which he must be a really good psychiatrist, because how was he able to get all of that just from this kid who stared at the wall and didn't say anything for 15 years? Yeah, he even says, like, at one point...
I watched him for 15 years, sitting in a room, staring at a wall, not seeing the wall, looking past the wall, looking at this night, inhumanly patient. waiting for some secret, silent alarm to trigger him off. Death has come to your little town, Sheriff. You can either ignore it or you can help me to stop it.
Yeah, because that's another thing. Nobody believes this dude. Like, just...
Yeah.
Nobody's listening to this dude. It's just like... They're probably just thinking, oh, he's just telling ghost stories or something about this weird demonic dude that kills kids or whatever. Granted, the first half of the movie, Michael doesn't do that much, aside from the opening.
Nah, he mostly just walks around, making sure he knows what's up.
And making people uncomfortable by staring at them from a distance.
Or in driving slowly past them.
That's true, yeah. You do briefly see him run at one point, which is a rarity in this series, because that's another joke about these movies, is that Michael Myers, he's able to catch up to people by just walking. No matter how fast you run, Michael Myers walks faster.
He walks faster.
They say the same thing about Jason as well, because Jason's like that. He's also called, another thing that's interesting in the credits is Michael Myers is called The Shape.
Which definitely makes him feel a bit more just ominous and less human.
Yeah, and that's exactly why John Carpenter, came up with that idea. He did not want people to see this dude as a human being. He wanted people to see him as just pure evil. Everything about this dude is mysterious. Maybe Michael Myers isn't even his real name for all we know. Because, the other ones kind of just take away from that a bit. They try to give him, family members or reasons why he kills. Whereas here, you're just maybe he just kills people just because that's the only thing he knows how to do. Just at this point. Yeah. It's like Rambo, war is just in his blood, I guess. He was just bred to be a killer. Maybe he's experiment or something. Anyway. The only movie of the series where Michael walks like a normal person. Fascinating. There's a lot of the other ones, he kind of just walks like a robot.
Yeah. Oh, one other thing that they do in this movie that they do in half the sequels, I think, is they watch the original The Thing from Another Planet, which John Carpenter later did, the pseudo remake of it, which was The Thing.
The Thing, yeah. And they also show Night of the Living Dead on the TV as well.
Yep.
They're coming to get you, Barbara. Another thing also is that some of the sequels, the costume for Michael Myers isn't quite right.
Yeah.
In this one, I think they got it right. But then for some reason, the second one, it looks kind of weird.
So I read about it. Apparently it's, it is the same mask that was used in the first one, but it was, kept under Deborah Hill's bed. And so it just, collected dust, and then, she became a smoker, and so they had to, try and, clean it up and repaint it, and so it ended up coming out a little weird.
I think I read that as well, yeah. The fourth one, it looks a little strange. I don't know why.
There's one where it looks really blonde. I don't remember which one that was.
The fifth one, also, it looked strange. I don't know why. It had kind of a triangular shape on it.
I just saw the mask from the fourth one. That looks... I forgot how weird that one looked.
All the ones... all the sequels after, 2 just kept getting it wrong.
Yeah.
Until you get to the newer ones where they finally got it right again. But yeah,
Something wrong with the hair in the fifth one. He looks more like Nicolas Cage than William Shatner in this mask, actually.
In the fourth one.
In the fifth one.
In the fifth one, yeah. Nicolas Cage. Another thing I was thinking about, so like, okay, we know that Michael just stands around staring at people during the day. But then, like, one thing I was thinking about is a lot of the, like, last half of this movie is Loomis just standing in the same spot. So I was, like, wondering how many hours has he just been standing there in that one spot? Like, Jesus. Which, granted, he's watching the house, but still, I'm just like... I also think this one stood the test of time because it doesn't have the corniness that most slashers from that time period have.
Yeah, it takes itself pretty seriously, and so it sort of avoids...
Yeah. Because, I mean, you know, we like some of the Friday the 13th movies, but they're pretty laughable. I mean, like, it's very hard to take them seriously.
Yeah.
And same with, like, some of the later Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Like, they get pretty goofy as they go. Again, there's some enjoyable ones, though, but, you know, it's just... But this one, I think part of it is this one's just a lot more subtle.
Yeah. And I think, again, that is sort of because it's toned down from what, you know, most people would think of with the slasher, because you hear slasher and you think, like, people getting, like, split open, exploding, stabbed through, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the kills are, like, off-screen, and Michael Myers is off-screen for a lot of it, too. Like, but again, that's just like, God, he could be anywhere in those shadows. But actually, I was thinking about it. I was, like, thinking Jaws is more gory than this movie, and that film was PG.
Yeah.
And that came out, like, 3 years before this, but yeah. And also, I think it's just, it was in capable hands. I mean, John Carpenter made it, so... He had a talented director behind the helm of this one. And they made it for, like, it was on such a low budget. Like, just... you know... People like to use, like, low budget as, like, an excuse for a movie being bad. But, like, come on, this movie...
like, this is fantastic, and it had a tiny budget.
Like, Jesus. Or even just, like, you know, you look at, like, first two Evil Dead movies. Those weren't made for that much money, and they're pretty good. I also love this shot towards the end when Michael, like, sits up in the background.
Yeah.
I thought they, like... like, Laurie Strode thought that he was, like, dead or something, but no, he, like, gets back up, and it's out of focus, though. But, like, from the music, you know what's happening, and it's just such a creepy shot.
That's another one of those just iconic shots from the movie, is him just slowly setting up.
And I also like how Laurie Strode, when she like talks to Loomis a little bit at the end, she like says it was the boogeyman, and then Loomis says, as a matter of fact, it was.
It was.
Because they keep mentioning the boogeyman throughout the movie, and I'm like, yeah. If you're gonna call somebody the boogeyman,
might as well be Michael Myers.
Either that or Casey and the Sunshine Band, I guess. But and when you see him without his mask, he looks kind of weird.
Yeah. It's not quite what you would expect.
Like his eye, like something's wrong with his eye. Like his left eye. I don't know what exactly it was. But he looks really young, though.
Yeah.
Which, for some reason, I imagine Michael Myers being, like, really old behind the mask. Maybe that's just because of how many movies there are in this series.
Yeah. I mean, he's pretty old in in like the newest trilogy.
Yeah, because he's played by Nick Castle. You know, it's 40 years later.
Yeah.
And the ending of this movie's great. where he just disappears. He gets up and walks off those bullets, no problem.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Another thing that's creepy about that opening too, that I just like, and I forget about this sometimes, you know, people didn't know it back then. Which is that, you know, at least until they reveal it, but like the opening of the movie's shot from Michael Myers' point of view, and it's him killing his sister, and then they reveal what he looks like. He's just a little kid. But like, I kind of just know that because I've seen the movie several times, but I gotta forget, like, that must have been really shocking at the time.
Yeah.
To find out that such a horrible,
because it is
horrible murder was committed by like a 6-year-old. I think he's like 6 or 7.
Yeah, he's at 6, I'm pretty sure.
And he's wearing like a clown costume too. Imagine if he went around wearing that movie instead.
It's a very different movie.
I think they were considering doing that, but they didn't end up doing that. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
It's interesting to kind of just think about it at the time it came out, too, like what people's reactions would have been to seeing this in 1978. Because, like, it was like, what, 5 years after The Exorcist, which was, like, the absolute most extreme horror movie that ever went mainstream.
One of them, yeah, certainly. And then this one's, like, really toned down and, like, a lot more subtle. But this movie's also more realistic, too. It's more relatable to most people. Because it's just set in this, like, small town, you know, like, The Exorcist, like, the main character of that is, like, she's, like, this famous Hollywood actress, you know, and her daughter gets possessed. Like, not as many people can relate to that as just high schoolers being terrorized by some tall dude in a mask. I do have 2 cons, though, and these are pretty minor, though, in the grand scheme of things.
Okay.
One is that Michael Myers kills dogs.
Yeah, that's not cool.
I'm not a fan of that.
I can excuse the death of several babysitters, but I draw the line at animal cruelty.
Yeah, killing kids, that's fine. But dogs, come on, don't kill dogs. And also, there's some performances in this that aren't the best, mostly from, like, some of Laurie Strode's friends, I was noticing.
Yeah.
You know? But we gotta cut him some slack for that, you know? But yeah, so overall thoughts.
It's a fantastic movie. It's a classic for a reason.
I was about to say that, yeah.
It holds up remarkably well for being, what, just under 50 years old? Yeah, 45 years old.
It doesn't really show its age that much.
Yeah.
Iconic score. That definitely is, like, a huge part of the movie's appeal. Like, I mean, lots of people have heard that music, even if they haven't watched the movie.
Yeah. Donald Pleasance's performance.
Absolutely, yep. Jamie Lee Curtis. Michael Myers is a great villain again. I like how it's very well paced too. Like, it spends the first half just building up all the tension before just letting it all loose. Just like the last, like, third of the movie is just super suspenseful, and you're just like, oh my god. Like,
yeah.
And you just don't tend to get slasher movies this good. You know, like, because there's, like, what, maybe 2 or 3 slasher movies that could compete with this one. Which would be, like, maybe the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie. The first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you know, it's the competition, you know, I mean, I was watching this, I was like, having trouble deciding like between this or Escape from New York as my favorite John Carpenter movie.
Hmm.
The reason I'm having trouble is just because they're so different from each other.
Yeah.
You can tell that both of them are John Carpenter movies, though, because of the music and stuff. But like, and the camera work, great camera work in the movie, by the way. What I like about this one is just how like simple and to the point it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like you know what the movie's about. It sets everything up, and then you're just like waiting for all hell to be unleashed, I guess. And it was made on such a low budget. It's an impressive movie from that standpoint. Yeah. I almost want to give this one the edge over Escape from New York just because of Michael Myers, actually. Because he's a really creepy villain in this.
I'd say that's fair. For me...
Escape from New York is probably more fun, though.
Yeah.
Again, they're just very different movies, you know. But also, another thing is Halloween also has Loomis in it, too. So, like...
Yeah.
Like, both movies have Donald Pleasance in them. Oh, damn, but Escape from New York has Snake Plissken in it. And just an insane concept. Escape from New York feels more like a movie that I would try to make, honestly. Like, just, you know. Because I feel like at some point I'd like to make some kind of weird dystopian type movie like that.
Yeah.
But then again, Halloween feels like a movie I'd try to make if I had no money. So there's that.
See, for me, I think I'd put Halloween at my second favorite John Carpenter film.
Behind
I think
the Thing.
I think The Thing. Yeah, I think The Thing is still...
Oh god, yeah, that's another one.
The top.
Thing. The Thing is a really, really scary movie. It's got like one of the best like horror movie monsters of all time too. But I think I like Halloween a little bit more just because I like the characters in it a little bit more. You know, Laurie Strode, Loomis, Michael Myers. You know. And then Escape from New York I like more than The Thing. But The Thing is also a fantastic movie. All three of these are fantastic movies, I guess. I wish Halloween was just a standalone film, honestly, because then that makes Michael Myers scarier in that regard, and it also makes the ending of this movie a lot scarier.
Yeah.
Because then you're just imagining him going on yet another killing spree, you know, and not being caught, you know. Because in the sequels, they keep, like, he keeps coming back to life, or he keeps getting put in jail and stuff, so, like... So yeah. Do you want to move on to the next movie then?
Yes.
Okay, Halloween 2. It was released October 30th, 1981. It cost $2.5 million. It made $25.5 million in North America. So it didn't make quite as much as the first one, but it was still
a pretty impressive return.
It was one of the more successful horror movies of that year, from what I could find, actually. And that's another
something
thing
else
we might talk about more later, but like you can tell this movie was made after the slasher craze that the first movie had inspired had taken off. So yeah.
And one other thing, we have a returning production company. The Dino De Laurentiis.
That's right. Yeah, Dino De Laurentiis was involved with this. I forgot about that. I feel like we just did. Yeah, Maximum Overdrive. We just did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was like I feel like we mentioned him like not too long. But yeah. Dino De Laurentiis. It was directed by Rick Rosenthal, which I'm not that impressed with his other credits, because he also directed Halloween Resurrection.
Oh, no.
So he directed one of the better Halloween sequels and also one of the worst ones. That's kind of funny to think. And he also directed Birds 2 Land's End, or, well, he didn't want people to think that, because that's an Alan
is it an Alan
Smithy
Smithy movie?
Yeah, it's an Alan Smithy movie. He took his name off it. Credited him as Alan Smithy. John Carpenter still had some creative control over this, because he did the music and he wrote the script. He's the one that drunkenly came up with the idea of having Laurie Strode be related to Michael Myers, but we'll get to that. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but I've heard rumors that it might be, because Empire Strikes Back came out around the same time. You know, with the whole, like, family reveal in that movie, but, you know, again, that could just be speculation. But he ended up regretting the decision of having Michael Myers be related to Laurie Strode.
Which is sort of reflected in the new trilogy, because they ignore this movie.
Depending on which timeline you're...
Oh, is now a good time to bring up the timeline nonsense with Halloween?
If you want to talk about the timeline, sure.
All right, here's the most abridged version. So
I have a graphic, actually, to go with it.
Yes. So in the original timeline, it goes Halloween, then Halloween 2, and then Halloween 4, 5, and 6. And then you go like that's like Laurie dies sometime between the second and fourth movie. But then if Laurie's alive, then it goes Halloween, Halloween 2, Halloween H2O, and then Halloween Resurrection. Then there
Didn't she die in Resurrection, though?
I haven't even watched Resurrection. I don't know.
I think she dies in Resurrection. I think that she, like, dies in, like, the first 10 minutes of that movie, right?
I really don't know.
Yeah, she dies in that one. Okay, I looked up the Wikipedia summary.
And
How many times has Laurie Strode died? She's died almost as many times as Michael has.
And then, in the newest trilogy that came out, it goes Halloween, and then Halloween, and then Halloween Kills and Halloween.
Can we talk about this? Sorry I interrupted you, but I want to talk about this. Halloween is the 1978 movie, but then there's another movie called Halloween from 2018.
Which is the sequel to Halloween. Not to be confused with the remake Halloween, directed by Rob Zombie. And by the way, the Halloween 2 we're about to talk about shouldn't be confused with Halloween 2, also directed by Rob Zombie.
Sorry, could you go over that one again? Because I think I might have talked over a bit of it.
Yeah.
So, Halloween, then there's the 2018 movie.
And then there's Halloween Ends. And then there's the remake timeline by Rob Zombie, which is Halloween and Halloween 2. So that's 3 movies titled Halloween. And of course, we can't forget...
This isn't even mentioning Halloween 3.
Yeah, no, we can't forget Halloween 3, which is just off by itself, doing its own thing, not connected to anything at all.
Which, that one's confusing too, because in that movie...
They're watching the first Halloween movie.
Yeah. I love this timeline. They've, like, rebooted things sometimes. They're basically just like, no, start over, just like... Because the reason why this happens is because they keep ignoring movies. The nice thing about this, though, is you can kind of just ignore
movies you don't like.
The movies you don't, which for me, I basically ignore like 5, 6, H2O, and Resurrection, and the Rob Zombie ones, obviously. I just realized that's like half of the series. Jesus. But yeah, it's so confusing that they did that. The cast for this, for getting back to Halloween 2, not the Rob Zombie one, the other Halloween 2. We have a few returning cast members. We got Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yep, we got Donald Pleasance.
And a few new ones. We got Lance Guest, which we mentioned The Last Starfighter earlier. He's the main character in The Last Starfighter.
Oh.
And he's also in Jaws the Revenge.
Yeah. The best Jaws movie.
Jesus Christ, that movie is so bad.
Is he the son of the main character from the original in that one?
One of them, yeah, he's one of them. I feel like that movie was the one that wrecked his career, because, I mean, when you're in Jaws the Revenge, like... Michael Caine, on the other hand, he turned out fine. You know? He got a house out of... I don't know if I ever showed you this quote, but he was asked about Jaws the Revenge. He said, "I have never seen it, but by all accounts, it is terrible. However, I have seen the house that it built, and it is terrific." I'll put this in there. He also couldn't attend the Oscars, where he won, by the way. He won, like, Best Supporting Actor. He couldn't attend because he was busy filming Jaws the Revenge.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
And, like, if I remember right, the only reason he agreed to be in it was, well, money, but also he got to spend time in the Bahamas. And you know what?
Not too bad of a deal.
Oh, speaking of Jaws, Jeffrey Kramer is in this, which he plays Deputy Lenny Hendricks in Jaws.
Oh.
And Jaws 2, if I remember. I think he's just in the first 2, but...
Nick Castle only appears in footage they reused from the first movie. They have a new person playing Michael Myers in this one who has...
the greatest
Probably
name.
the greatest name I've ever heard. It's Dick Warlock.
Dick Warlock. Oh my goodness. Sounds like a stripper name.
I like how if you look through his filmography, there's certain movies where he's credited as Richard Warlock.
Yeah. I wonder if at some point he just went, "Fuck it, I'm the Dick Warlock." So, initial thoughts on Halloween 2. This is the best Halloween 2.
That's fair.
And for me, it's one of the more memorable Halloween sequels. I find 4, 5, and H2O kind of forgettable. Especially H2O, I especially find forgettable. And then some of the other ones I do remember, I'm like, I wish I didn't remember anything from those. So. But yeah, the ending is very memorable, kind of for the wrong reason, but we'll get to that. There were a lot of weird choices with this one. Like the plot and character decisions, but again, we'll get to that. It also feels more like an 80s slasher film than the first. You can tell that the Friday the 13th movies were starting to become popular at this point.
Yeah, they definitely turn up the gore and the blood in this one.
Although it doesn't quite go all out with it like some of the later sequels, but again.
Yeah.
You have good performances from Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasance. It's shot well. Like, it's a competently made movie. It's just, I think the plot is a little too illogical, and things feel a little too convenient, but overall, I think it's enjoyable. Not as good as the first, but enjoyable.
So for me, like I mentioned, we had started doing this sort of binge of the Halloween movies my sophomore year in college. We got to this one. There were a few scenes that stuck out to me from the first time I had watched this movie, but I couldn't really remember much of it. Upon this rewatch, I will say, among the sequels, it's definitely one of the best ones. It probably is the best sequel that they have.
Until you get to, I would say, some of the newer ones, like, well, the 2018 one is maybe a little bit
It's
better.
been a while since I've seen the 2018 one, so I don't remember that one too well. But
that one is one of the better sequels, though, to be fair.
I will say, overall, except for a few scenes, which I did remember from my first time watching, I wasn't too impressed with this one. I think, like you mentioned, it was competently made, but it was a bit too slow and boring. It didn't quite have the same tension that the first one had.
It's not as, it's not as scary as the first.
Yeah, and then although they did turn up the blood and gore, they didn't do it to such like a huge level that it became funny, with, again, a few exceptions. But it just, and the pacing seemed just a little bit too stretched out for me.
It was kind of slow, yeah. But, I mean, the first... Yeah, it was kind of trying to do what the first one did, just not as well, yeah.
Yeah, so it's an okay movie, but I didn't really enjoy it too much.
Okay. That is interesting. It's been a while since we've had a slightly differing opinion. Well, it's not that much of a difference of opinion, Like, you'd give it, like a 6 out of 10, basically.
Yeah, I think a 6 is fair. Yeah.
I'd probably give it like a 7, then. That's not that much of a difference of opinion. I mean, this isn't like exactly like, our Attack of the Clones podcast, where I was definitely more. and I definitely enjoyed it more than you did, but anyway. And I can kind of understand with this one. But again, compare it to some of the other sequels, I mean...
Yeah. I think this just kind of says my thoughts on the franchise as a whole, that I think the second best movie is a 6 out of 10.
Jesus. Where would you put Ends, then? Halloween Ends?
Oh, I don't know, because it's a terrible movie, but I have so much fun with that one. It's honestly probably like a 3 or a 4. But it definitely crosses into the so bad it's good category for me.
Parts of it kind of did, like, just so many of Michael's kills in that is just him crushing someone's face.
Yeah, and then like the weird like other kid that's there, that's like following around Michael Myers and also killing, like when he blow torches the dude in the mouth, like,
yeah, it's so weird. One person who liked it even less than you did is Michael Myers. Michael Myers liked this movie less than you. That might be true, because he does technically die.
Yeah, he dies in this one, technically.
I can't believe I almost called Leonard Maltin Michael Myers, but okay, what do you want? What do you want to guess he gave it?
I'm gonna guess he gave it a bomb, honestly.
No, actually.
Really?
1.5 stars out of 4.
That's pretty close.
He said, explicitly bloody sequel is as bad as any of Halloween's countless clones. Well, that's not true, Leonard. Have you seen some of the other sequels? Jesus. So the plot to this one is that it takes place on Halloween night. The first Halloween movie where it actually takes place on Halloween. Interesting.
Yeah.
Michael Myers is still on the loose. Meanwhile, Laurie Strode is in the hospital, and she finds out Michael is her brother and that he's coming for her.
And so they establish a motive.
I didn't used to be that bothered by that plot point when I was when I first saw these movies. I wasn't that bothered by that plot point just because I kind of just thought that was always a thing with these movies, so I just took it for granted. But then I realized I was introduced in the second movie, not the first one. But yeah. So now I'm just kind of, that does take away from some of the mysteriousness of Michael Myers. But that doesn't explain why he kills all those other people, though.
It doesn't explain why he knows how to drive, either.
Yeah, no, it does not. Meanwhile, Loomis is trying to warn everyone, but of course, they're not listening. God damn it. Okay, one thing I didn't realize until this rewatch is that the sheriff is named Lee Brackett. And I was wondering if that was like an intentional reference to the writer Lee Brackett, but
it probably is. Because I'm pretty sure, I forget exactly where it comes from, but I know Sam Loomis is a reference.
Oh, Psycho. Character.
Yep.
There's a character from Psycho named Sam Loomis. That's what it's referencing. And also the fact Jamie Lee Curtis is in these movies, and she's the daughter of Janet Leigh, who was in Psycho. So we'll start with pros. Let's keep this somewhat positive.
Can I talk about my favorite scene in the movie to start off?
Is it the ending?
No.
Okay, what's your favorite? Oh wait, I know what it is.
So Loomis
the part when Ben
and the
Tramer
sheriff
dies, right?
So Loomis and the sheriff are just walking around the next day. Loomis is like, Michael is here, we have to find him. And the sheriff's like, look, you don't know that, pal.
Okay.
And suddenly they see a guy that's dressed exactly like Michael Myers. Like, he's got the mask, except the hair is like blonde, and he's wearing like a mechanic suit. And so Loomis chases after him with a gun, trying to shoot him, and the sheriff is trying to stop him. This guy dressed like Michael Myers, like, keeps looking at him, but he's just walking away slowly into the street. And then a cop car doing like 60 in a residential zone plows into him, smashes him into an ambulance, and then the cars explode and fry the guy immediately. And it turns out that he's not even Michael Myers. It's just some random guy dressed exactly like Michael Myers.
You know who he is, actually?
Who's just executed. I know he was like one of the kids, but I don't know who the actor was.
Ben Tramer, he's not... I don't think he appears in the first movie, but they mention him.
Really?
He was this guy that Laurie was supposed to go on a date with. And they just fucking killed him in this movie.
In the funniest way possible.
He was also drunk, too. We should mention that, because they mentioned he was drunk. But yeah, it's like... But yeah, that scene was kind of ridiculous and didn't make a lot of sense, because...
Why is there a guy just dressed like Michael Myers walking around the day after?
Because, yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense.
Why was the cop going like 60 miles an hour at a 25? Why was he aiming right for the ambulance?
That's so weird, yeah. Everything about that scene is just weird. But another thing I was gonna mention is, yeah, and that scene is enjoyable, but for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, no.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. But also you add on that nonsensical scene, but that was supposed to be Laurie's crush, and you're just like, oh my fucking god, what? Okay, so yeah, one thing about this movie is, unlike the first one, it does actually take place on Halloween.
Yep.
The first one takes place the day before, and this one takes place on the very next day. I do kind of like that, actually, how you can kind of just edit these two movies together.
And it is just one series of events.
Yeah. Although you can kind of notice with this one that, yeah, John Carpenter didn't make it, but, well, he didn't direct it.
Yeah.
He was involved with some of it, but he didn't direct it. Anyway. It was a weird choice, but I liked the use of the song Mr. Sandman by the Chordettes.
Yeah. Because it shows up a couple times throughout the film.
Yeah, at the beginning and at the end.
Yeah.
I don't know why they chose that song, but okay, I'm fine with that. Especially at the end, it just doesn't make sense, because she's like in an ambulance, and it cuts to Michael's body burning up. Like, what?
Should we talk about the final scene now that we've mentioned Michael's burning corpse?
Yes, let's talk about the ending. This is the thing I always remembered from this movie because of how fucking crazy it is. Because the first one tended to keep it mostly pretty realistic.
Yeah.
With this one, you have Michael Myers. He gets he gets his eyes shot out by Laurie Strode because she has a gun.
So he can't see. He's just stumbling around, swinging a knife everywhere.
I don't even think it was a knife. I think it was like a scalpel.
Oh yeah, it was a scalpel.
It was like a scalpel, and then Michael gets blinded, and then Loomis lights.
He starts leaking like an oxygen tank, ether, oxygen coming out of the walls.
He lights it on fire. They just both blow up. And Michael and Loomis both get incinerated, and then as if that wasn't already ridiculous.
I think the worst part about it is they both technically survived.
No.
Until...
We didn't even get to the next part, which is you see Michael Myers walking around on fire.
And he's on fire.
And then he just falls over.
Pretty sure Jason's done that at some point in Friday the 13th.
Honestly, feels more like something to be in Terminator than fucking. Oh my god, it's ridiculous. I mean, and then like you mentioned, somehow Michael Myers and Dr. Loomis returned in the fourth one. The fourth one, okay, you definitely don't get an explanation for why Michael comes back, but with Loomis, his face is a little bit scarred, and they kind of show that his arm is burned up a bit in the fifth one, but they don't really mention that. I guess Loomis and Michael are just immortal beings that are doomed to fight each other.
I mean, isn't that sort of implied at the end of 6?
Oh, that's right, yeah, because he gets the thorn curse.
And he's just screaming, "No!" for a minute straight at the end of that movie.
He lets out one of the weirdest screams I've ever heard. Yeah, there really was no reason to bring them back, but I'm kind of glad they did, because, I mean, 4, 5, and 6 would have, especially 5 and 6, those two movies would have been unwatchable if it wasn't for Dr. Loomis.
Yeah.
And also, this doesn't make sense because you see Michael's eyes in some of the sequels.
Yeah, and he's still able to see.
You see his eyes in H2O, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also the fact he's able to walk around. Maybe Michael is just like a demon or something. I don't know. But yeah, the ending, that's the part I always remember. Again, the ending, it was enjoyable, but kind of for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw this movie, I'm like, what the fuck is this? And really, that ending, this should have just been the last one. I mean, Michael and Loomis are both dead. What else is there to do?
Yeah.
The only other thing I could think they could do is Laurie Strode turns into a killer or something. Like I don't like it runs in the family, I guess. Oh, that should be the tagline.
That's the plot though for like 6, isn't it?
No.
But that's part of it. Like they're like chasing down like the rest of his bloodline so they can fulfill some ritual.
Laurie Strode's not in it.
Well, not Laurie, but like Laurie's daughter or granddaughter or something. Yeah, and so it is like in the family.
I don't remember her killing anyone in that, but anyway. But that what I was saying is like if they were gonna do that with Laurie Strode, like in one of the sequels, the tagline should have been "It runs in the family" or something like that. Because yeah, really, what else is there to do after that? Aside, I guess, from just doing the same damn thing over and over again, but make even less sense. I do like the towards the beginning when Loomis is like running around trying to warn people about Michael Myers. There's like this one neighbor that gets mad at him.
Yeah.
Call the police. Tell the sheriff I shot him. Who? Tell him he's still on the loose.
Is this some kind of joke? I've been trick-or-treated to death tonight.
You don't know what death is.
I think like the first one, I think this one's pretty well shot.
Yeah.
You know, you still got some good shots like outside, like in the dark. I think the scenes of Laurie running around in like the parking lot, that's probably like the best shot part of the movie there. And also, I think that's like one of the only parts of the movie that for me came close to being as intense as the first one.
Yeah.
Because like the rest of it, you're just kind of like, I mean, it kind of just is the first movie again, except not as
interesting, not as tense. Like I got to a point where I was like, all right, I'm pretty sure we're close to the end, and there was still like 40 minutes left, and I was like, oh, this is a longer movie than it should be.
It's only like 91 minutes.
I know, it's still too long.
Maybe that's the problem. It feels too much like an epilogue to the first movie rather than, but we can get more into that in the cons. You get some gorier kills. Do you have like a favorite kill in this movie, or?
Well, the one that really stands out to me is when he like starts drowning the woman in the boiling water. Because that one was really over the top.
Which that one kind of doesn't make sense because his hand is being stuck in the boiling water too. But...
Listen, he survived getting blown up and got shot in both eyes. And is also carrying around 6 bullets from the night before. He's fine.
Granted, yeah, he is Michael Myers. You could just said he's Michael Myers or something like that. He does. I remember him poking the guy with the syringe. He poked several people with the syringe, if I remember right.
He also bled the one woman out. Like he put in like an IV and just let the blood drip out of her arm. Which, that was pretty creative, but...
Amazing. You know, maybe this is just an okay movie. You might be winning me over now, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Now that I'm talking about it. I think I might have cut it more slack just because it's not some of the other movies. So I'm
Dana
trying to remember
Carvey's in this film.
I'm trying to remember some of the other kills besides those ones, because there's
Those are really the only memorable ones, because I think a lot of them are just more stabbings, really.
oh, what doesn't he kills that one guy in that closet
Yeah.
at one point with a hammer. I remember that one.
Hmm.
He like kills the dude with a hammer. I do like the when some of them try running away to get in like the cars. It turns out Michael just popped all the car tires so they can't drive away.
Yeah, that was actually kind of clever.
And I also liked the setting of this one too, like because it's in this just most of it is set in a hospital and it's just really dark and empty.
Yeah. And it provides a lot of, like, because it was trying to be quite a bit like the first one, it does provide more places for him to, like, just sneak around in the shadows. But they don't quite do that as effectively, but...
They could have done a little bit more with it, though, now I think about it. Like, if it was, like, during the day and there were more, like, patients there, there's a lot you could do with that. Then again, it's Halloween night, so, you don't want to be stuck in a hospital on Halloween night, apparently. I could also kind of tell with this one that there was more money thrown at it.
Yeah.
Because again, a little more gore. They could afford more actors too. I could tell. Like the first one, there's not that many actors in it. At least that are huge roles. Whereas with this one, I could tell they could afford more actors, but I could also tell that some of them were actors who had more experience too. There was like one guy like some of the people working at the hospital, they're just sitting around like watching the TV. This one girl's like complaining to this one guy that she says every other word you say is hell or shit or damn, and then the guy says, sorry, I guess I just fuck up all the time. So there was a little bit of humor here and there too, which I liked.
I didn't feel like I cared
maybe I cut
quite as
this one.
much as...
Maybe I cut this one more slack just because Donald Pleasance is in it. You get more of Donald Pleasance just trying to warn people about. He gives like something I noticed is like every movie he gives some monologue about how evil Michael Myers is.
And it's always the best bit of dialogue in the movie.
Exactly, yeah. Like Halloween 5 is a terrible movie, but it has a really good like monologue from Loomis. And he like ends it by saying like something like, I prayed that he would burn in hell, but I knew in my heart that hell would not have him. And I was like, wow, that's actually a good line in a really bad movie.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what I liked about this one, is it kind of just felt like more of the first movie, so... it's like it continues the story in a way that doesn't quite become as bad as some of the other ones. So.
Yeah.
Like, you have to admit, at the very least, this one's not an embarrassing movie.
No, it's nowhere near as bad as, say 6 or...
6, yeah. I'm actually embarrassed about the fact that Resurrection exists. Like, I fucking hate that movie so much. And even the Rob Zombie ones, I hate the Rob Zombie ones. Especially the first one, but probably just because that one's like the exact opposite of the original movie. It's like so unsubtle and like so just like gratuitous in like every regard. Like, we didn't need this much backstory for Michael Myers. It makes him so much less scary. But anyway, mentioned the boiling water kill. We also get the I feel like the Sam Hain scene was a Shining reference. Because it's just like bloody,
Yeah.
a bloody message written on the wall.
I also kind of don't like that because that's like, it's almost setting up the weird cult plot line.
The thorn, yeah, it kind of is a little, yeah. I'm kind of struggling to find positives, aren't I? I guess it was a movie that I enjoyed watching it, but I didn't think it was like amazing. So there's that.
Yeah.
I thought the acting was fine. You know, like again, Donald Pleasance is great, like always. But you know, I actually, you know, Lance Guest I thought was, you know, decent, and Jamie Lee Curtis, of course. She doesn't get quite as much to do as she did in the first one, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, she spends almost the whole movie in the hospital.
Yeah. It kind of feels a bit like a Friday the 13th movie during parts of it. I was just thinking, because it doesn't... was it the fourth one that starts off in a hospital?
I think it is, because he gets, like, the axe to the face at the end of 3.
I'm pretty sure it was the fourth one, where, like, the beginning portion of it's in a
Yep,
hospital.
he's, like, taken to a morgue in the hospital, yeah. Yeah, and then he gets up and he kills the guy watching the weird exercise tape.
Yeah, what the hell was that? And that's not something that was made, like, for the movie. That's an actual exercise tape out there somewhere.
No, that was, like, a whole genre of exercise tapes, and it's weird.
Not quite as much to talk about with this one as the first.
No, I kind of figured that I wouldn't have much.
I will agree with you. It is a drop in quality from the first one, definitely. Granted, it's a little hard to top the first movie, so... I will say Michael Myers, he still feels like a boogeyman in this. At least more so than some of the other, you know, sequels. But, like, you know, the way they light him in this movie is pretty good. The way, you know, how he, like, comes out of the shadows and just startles people, you know. That stuff's always great. I like the part where he, like, lifts the nurse up, like, by the neck. And stabs her. I don't know why I didn't think to mention that one earlier, but because that's one of the more memorable kills from the movie. But anyway, and I mean the Michael, he does look a little different in this one, but it's still a good costume. Which again is probably just because it's the same mask, but it just has a bunch of nicotine on it. So
yeah,
okay. But yeah, we can get into cons now.
The pacing just doesn't work in this one. It is entirely too slow. Like, I was bored watching most of this movie.
I think part of it is they lost the unpredictability of the first one. Like, in this one, you can just see everything coming from a mile away. It's not scary.
Yeah.
When you compare it to the first movie, at least. Like, I was watching it just going, like, the intensity, like, the element of surprise is just not quite there. I think part of it could just be the change of director. Because this is the same director that did Birds 2, Land's End. Or, sorry, correction, Alan Smithy did that movie. He's the same director that did Halloween Resurrection, so... You don't have John Carpenter directing this one, although you do have his music there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it still kind of looks like the first movie in some shots. Just not quite as stylish or as intense, like we mentioned before.
I do feel like too much of it is just them trying to redo the first one because it does have a sort of similar thing where, like, a big part of the beginning is they're trying to build up
They should
to
have tried
Michael,
to
which really doesn't
differentiate it.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this movie is just like people talking in a hospital, and yeah, it doesn't quite have the same creepiness that the first movie had. I kind of wish that they had played off more of like, this is set on Halloween night. I kind of wish they had done a little bit more of that. Maybe Michael Myers kills some trick-or-treaters or something, you know? Like, maybe they open up their candy bag and there's, like, a guy's hand in it or something. I don't know. Something weird like that. Did they do that in one of the later ones? I can't remember. Anyway.
I don't think so. I don't remember.
Why would someone be wearing a Michael Myers costume? I know we mentioned this earlier, but...
That's one of those things that is still just baffling to me. Because it makes no sense.
Oh my gosh. Maybe it's Ben Tramer trying to... Like, imagine if Ben Tramer was trying to go on a date with Laurie while wearing that. That would not work at all, would it? Except in the timeline where Laurie just goes crazy and becomes Michael Myers. Wait, so does that make her Laurie Myers then?
Technically.
In this movie. Also, one thing that was kind of distracting, there was one cop whose voice sounded like Bill Paxton.
Really? I don't know if I don't know if I picked up on that guy.
He was a minor character, but it was like in one scene, and like every time he talked, I was like, that sounds like Bill Paxton.
Dana Carvey shows up as an extra at one point in this movie. Dana Carvey shows up at one point during this movie.
Oh, I don't remember that.
He apparently had scenes where he had dialogue, but they all got cut except for like one where he's just standing in the back not talking.
Wow. I think he's also in This Is Spinal Tap.
Huh.
Billy Crystal is in that as well. Well, I was about to say, though, like, I did mention the acting wasn't bad, but some of the acting from the cops, I will say, wasn't the best. And also the cops are just useless in this movie, too. This is another movie where the cops prove pretty useless.
Yeah.
They fucking kill a kid at one point on accident.
By ramming into him at 60 miles an hour into an ambulance on the other side of the street.
Just because of that, they might be the worst cops. Well, Dark Knight Rises had some pretty bad cops in it as well. If you're talking incompetence, anyway. Because if you're talking, like, bad as in, you know, immoral, then First Blood would probably be the top contender. This is a pretty minor detail, but I could see a dead body's eyes move at one point. I think it was Laurie's friend that got killed in the first movie. But anyway. I also noticed the editing wasn't as good as the first, because there were, like, a few cuts that I noticed that were really jarring. And I was like, wait, what? Although, granted, it might be because this was a longer movie, but then they cut stuff out of it, so... It did feel slower than it was. I will, you know, because this is only like a 91-minute movie, and it's like...
It feels a lot longer than 90 minutes.
It does feel longer than that, yeah. And the first one does not have that problem. I feel like with this one, they might have added too many new characters.
And, like, you don't really care about any of the new people.
I mean, I kind of like the one guy that fucks up all the time, just because he's kind of funny. Lance Guest, he was alright, but like, yeah, most of the other ones are just like, who cares? I want to see more of Laurie Strode.
I like the guy that decided to dress up like a serial killer that showed up the day before.
Ben Tramer, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of the subtlety of the first movie kind of went away with this one.
Yeah.
Because again, we mentioned the scene with well, we keep mentioning that scene, but I mean, come on, you know.
It's the most notable scene in the movie.
That and the ending, yeah, those are like the two things. And for some reason though, this is like, of the sequels, this is always the one I remembered the most from. There's just a lot of shots and like lines from it that I remember. Like I always forget what happens in 4 or 5 or like 6 and like H2O, but I always remembered this one for whatever reason. We mentioned, alright, the slow pacing, it doesn't work as well in this movie's favor. It just kind of feels like trying to build suspense, but it doesn't work like it did in the first one.
Yeah.
Okay, the big plot reveal in this we should talk about. Laurie being related to Michael Myers.
And they sort of use that as Michael's motivation for doing this because he wants to finish killing his other sister, which is kind of weird.
Doesn't make sense in the movie either, because apparently they had a file that was hidden after the trial.
Yeah, hidden from the psychiatrist or something. It's weird and confusing.
Yeah, I don't know. And even Loomis didn't know about this, apparently. It's just, what?
And it doesn't make too much sense because they're like, after their one daughter died, the Myers gave away Laurie to just some other people to adopt. Like, did they know Michael was gonna come back in like 20 years and try to kill her? Like,
it really does feel like and he does come back 20 years later to kill her. Yeah. But it really does feel like the makers of this movie, they saw The Empire Strikes Back and they're like, we need some like plot twist involving a family member in this movie, and they just kind of shoved it in there without really thinking it through. Kind of also what happened with Return of the Jedi, you know. Luke and Leia are siblings, apparently. Creating accidental incest in the process. I mean, it's not as bothersome as what they do in the later movies, but it still doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, granted, we are talking about a series where one of the sequels is that, he was, like, being controlled by a cult. And he, like, impregnated his niece. Like, what the fuck was that?
6 is a weird one, no matter which version you watch.
God, 6 was so bad. Like, again, the one of the only things that makes that movie watchable is Donald Pleasance. I mean, you know, because I always like seeing Loomis. You know, even if the movie's terrible, I'm like, hey, Loomis is here, yay. Like, even 5 is a bad movie, but I'm like, yo, Donald Pleasance at least gets some good scenes here and there. Even if he is playing a fucking maniac in that movie. At one point, a woman licks Michael's hand. Because he, like, okay, it's during that scene where they're in the
hot tub area, right?
Yeah, they're like, Michael, like, comes up behind her, and she thinks it's her boyfriend, so she's, like, licking his hand. I thought that was so weird. And I was also thinking, like, how does she not recognize that hand clearly doesn't belong to him? And his hand is probably so dirty and like covered with blood too.
Yeah.
Because there's also that part where he like steals a knife from a woman's kitchen and leaves some blood behind. You know what? Fuck it. I do like this movie. I don't care what anyone says. Again, it's nothing great, but you know, I'm like thinking about it, like remembering, yeah, I like that part, you know, just anyway, there's no logical reason behind it, but fuck it. Granted, I also like Attack of the Clones, so hell, I even like Rise of Skywalker. No, I'm kidding. I don't like that movie. That movie's a piece of shit.
Yeah, is Rise of Skywalker a better or worse film than Halloween 6?
Oh god, they're actually bad for similar reasons. I'm gonna say Halloween 6 is worse because the acting's worse.
Yeah.
But the plot in Halloween 6 makes about as much sense as Rise of Skywalker's plot. Then again, Halloween 6 has not pleasance in it, but anyway. I'd rather watch Rise of Skywalker than Halloween 6, though. Back to Halloween 2. The ending's pretty ridiculous. Again, it's enjoyable, but for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Even for like a Friday the 13th movie, that would be a ridiculous death for the villain. Like, because you don't really see Jason catch on fire. Well,
You know, you do a couple of times.
not die from it, though.
Oh, yeah, no, he doesn't. Well, I mean, at the end of Jason Goes to Hell, he does go to hell, and I'm pretty sure that involves like a giant pillar of fire.
I don't count Jason Goes to Hell. I hate that fucking movie.
That's fair.
He gets pulled down into hell by Freddy Krueger, too. I remember that.
Yeah, well, his mask does.
Yeah, the mask. You want to wrap it up?
Yeah.
Overall thoughts?
It's okay. As far as Halloween sequels go, it's one of the better ones, but
I wasn't able to sway you on it, I guess.
No.
Granted, there's not that much to defend. I mean, it's just... like, I mean, I like it. It's enjoyable, but again, nowhere near as good as the first, you know. I think if the first movie... if it didn't have to live up so much to that first movie, it'd be a much more enjoyable film.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of it. But like it's competently made at least. Good music. The acting's not bad, at least for one of these types of movies.
Yeah.
There's some parts I thought were kind of scary. Like the parking lot scene's pretty good. That's a pretty intense scene. And like we said, it's one of the better Halloween sequels. We can agree on that at least. It's one of the better Halloween sequels. I guess I just like these movies more than you do. Maybe that's it. Because I'll be real, I actually like the fourth one, if I'm being honest. Like a lot of people don't.
I really don't like most of these movies.
After 4, though, I kind of stopped caring, but I do find the timeline of these movies funny, because you just sort of like, wait, this one negates that one, this one negates that, oh my god, what? Basically, every sequel gets ignored somewhere along the way. I'm just waiting for, like, the next Halloween movie to just completely ignore, like, the 2018 one.
It probably will. You see, if I was in charge of the franchise, what I would do is make a movie called Halloween 4 and have it be a sequel to Halloween 3.
Wow.
I would just make it an absolute nightmare.
Oh my god. The nice thing about this timeline, though, is you can just kind of pick and choose which sequels to ignore. You know. And even though you only wanted to do the first 3 on the podcast, I did end up rewatching some of the other ones just for the hell of it. It is the Halloween season after all, might as well. So I rewatched 4, 5, and part of H2O. H2O was more boring than I remembered. And I'll admit, I do still like Halloween 4. I do like that one. It's kind of like 2, where, I mean, it's not great and it is kind of pointless, but hey, it's more of Michael Myers and wreaking havoc and Loomis running around warning people about what's going on. And it has one of the best kills of the series. It's the part where Michael Myers stabs a woman with a shotgun. So there's that. 5, though, that one was worse than I remembered. That one's pretty bad.
Isn't that the one where the niece has, like, a psychic link?
Yeah, I think it was. Because the 4th one, that was something that was disappointing, was the 4th one kind of set up the niece as, like, the next killer. But the 5th one does nothing with that. Loomis is acting crazier than usual. He's like...
Loomis has completely lost it by that time.
That's the one where Loomis is, like, constantly yelling in this little girl's face, and, like, he tries using her as bait at the end. It's so, like... Although, to be fair, Donald Pleasance, he still acts the hell out of that role.
Yeah.
Even in the really shitty ones. H2O, I don't have much to say about that one. I don't like that one. It's just bland and boring. I know you're not a fan of that one either, but...
No, that's what got me to stop watching them.
And would you believe it, the one after that was even worse. And then after that, the 6 is garbage. Resurrection is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And I hate the Rob Zombie ones. Those ones just depressed me. And as for the David Gordon Green ones, well, that will be a future podcast. Not the near future, though, at least from what you were saying.
Yeah, we at least need a break from Halloween before we jump back in.
I think we should take a bit of a break from this series, but not for the next one, because our next podcast is...
Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Or in other words, the one where when people walked out of the theater, they were saying, "Where the fuck was Michael Myers, man?" Yeah, this one's a weird one. I don't know if it'll be better or worse than I remembered, but okay.
Until then, Andy Griffith.
Good night, you stupid idiot. Good night, you miserable slob.